It's Taylor time for the Washington Commanders as Taylor Heinicke will lead his team to face the team he grew up cheering for, the Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers. One of his idols, but of course, Brett Favre, the ultimate idol, Taylor Heinicke, wearing number 4 for the Commanders. All that right now for you on this crossover Thursday episode of the Locked On Commanders podcast. Let's go.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up and welcome to the Locked On Commanders and the Locked On Packers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders and the Green Bay Packers, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And we thank you for making us your first listen or your first view of the day. I'm David Harrison, Credential Media, covering the Commanders for Sports Illustrated's Commander Country. And to my right, as you're seeing him if you're on YouTube, is Peter Bukowski, co-founder of The Leap and host of the Locked On Packers podcast. If you're listening to us on audio, hopefully we're both all around you, which is a little bit creepy. But Peter, a great matchup, Green Bay Packers, Washington Commanders, classic rivalry, historic in nature. Not completely, but two franchises that have a lot of history, obviously, right?
For
and
sure.
I mean, on this side of things, you know, if there was going to be a game for Taylor Heinicke to start this year and get his first start this year, why wouldn't it be against the Green Bay Packers? And I'm sure your listeners are all aware of the story, but basically, like I mentioned in the opening, Taylor Heinicke, raised by his Packer-loving father, so he was a Packers lover as well as a child, grew up idolizing Brett Favre, which is why he wears number 4. Last memory, or one of the last memories he has of his father is watching Aaron Rodgers lead the Green Bay Packers to a Super Bowl win. So a lot of love coming from the quarterback wearing burgundy and gold towards the Green Bay Packers. But of course, this weekend, he's looking to beat the Packers. Peter, what is the biggest story for the visiting team this weekend?
The biggest story for the Packers is WTF. What is going on with the Green Bay Packers? I mean, that is the biggest story. And unfortunately for them, that has a lot of tentacles. What's going on with the offensive line? Who's going to be the starting 5? It sounds like they're going to make changes. What's going on with Aaron Rodgers? He's not playing anywhere near the level that we've expected him to. What more can you get from this group of pass catchers with Randall Cobb now going to be out 2 to 4 weeks? We'll see if Sammy Watkins can get back for this game. We'll see if Christian Watson can get back for this game. I'm not optimistic about the latter. The former, I think, has a chance to play this week. And then defensively, can they carry over what they did last week in the passing game and just like be a tick better in the run game? They've been the worst run defense in football this season. So yeah, what is going on with the Packers? That is sort of the big thing here. I said last week on my show that this was an opportunity to prove against the Jets, that this is an opportunity for the Packers to prove that they're contenders. Go out and do to the Jets what the Jets did to the Packers, beat them 27-10, that kind of thing. The same opportunity presents itself against the Commanders with a backup quarterback. And the Commanders are not, I don't think, a terrible team. It's
Right.
just that coming in, the expectations were that the Packers would be much better than the Commanders.
Yep.
And so with a backup quarterback and a desperate team, you expect them to come out fiery. If I'm just going to pick one thing for the Packers, it's, do they have the piss and vinegar to just come out aggro, be mad? Because they did not come out with any sort of intensity against the Jets. I'm willing to just say, okay, London, they come out, noon game, flat, and the Jets just sort of more urgency, and they were never able to really recover. Those excuses are now gone. Every excuse that you could possibly give this team, those are now gone. They have to go and just win a football game in a convincing fashion.
Yeah.
And for the Commanders, like, they're a desperate team too, because they had expectations. They built this roster, right? Like, they thought they were going to be a pretty good team. That's the only reason you go get Carson Wentz is because you think you're going to be a playoff team. And so far, they've won some games. They've lost some games. They got to play Justin Fields. So did the Packers. That helps any team because it's going to boost the record a little bit. But like, what are you looking for in this matchup? Because it seems like there's a lot going on in Washington right now, on and off the field, right?
Yeah, there's a lot. And you know what? Like Ron Rivera, I'm going to try, at least for this episode, I'm going to try to keep it to football.
Okay,
I
that's
like
fine.
that approach, and I'm sure that some of my listeners and some of my viewers are going to appreciate that approach on this episode as well. But yeah, I mean, the Packers are just really one part of just a really weird kind of season that we've started to have here in the first 6 weeks, and specifically in the NFC. I remember preseason we all kind of talked about it's Bucks, Rams, Packers, and then everyone else. Well, the Bucks, Rams, and Packers are all 3-3, so they're not even necessarily putting themselves on top. So really, it's the Eagles and then everyone else. And I don't know how many people had this much confidence in the Eagles entering the season. But the biggest story on the Commander side of this thing, and I've already touched on it, it's got to be Taylor Heinicke. The quarterback is the most important position on the field. So when you have a new one, even one that is experienced in the scheme, is experienced with a lot of these players, and we've obviously seen him start against this team specifically just one season ago, it's still going to be the biggest story. And really the talk of the town right now is a contrast from this year between last year, or coming from last year. And last year, 2021 against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau, Taylor Heinicke, 25 of 37, 268 yards, a touchdown, and interception, a QBR of 86.3. Not terrible, not amazing, but not terrible. 10 carries, 95 yards. I felt like that was really kind of where he made his mark. I know there was that one controversial run that I think the refs got right. If you don't like the rule, you just don't like the rule, but the ruling was accurate. Look, the Commanders last season, they left 12 points on the field via missed or blocked field goals, and going for it in goal-to-go situations that, in my observation, and I still stand by this, were signs of desperation. So taking the points, you were desperate because you honestly, it reeked to me of a team that knew they were not good enough to go blow for blow with the Packers. They needed the touchdowns versus the points. They end up leaving those 12 points on the board, losing by 14. Oh, by the way, also give the Packers a short field via a Taylor Heinicke strip sack, courtesy of Rashawn Gary. So all those things combined, you can fix those things. Potentially, maybe you come up with an upset win. Coming into this season, however, there are some differences in the Washington Commanders team, and they feel like those differences could potentially be the catalyst to helping them get an upset win this weekend, which would be huge for the Washington Commanders, and perhaps more influential or more impactful for the Commanders in a positive light, as it would be detrimental to the Green Bay Packers, because if the Green Bay Packers lose to the Giants, Jets, and Commanders, the questions are going to get louder, and the lights, of course, are only going to get brighter. But I really think it all starts with Taylor Heinicke and what this team does that they've been doing, or different from what they've been doing already with Carson Wentz. And then, oh, by the way, you mentioned the run defense. Brian Robinson Jr. getting his second start, really starting to feel like he's catching up with the rest of the offense after 2 weeks of playing against Chicago Bears and the Tennessee Titans.
What a story, too. Brian Robinson, the unfortunate incident where he's shot, and then not just recovers and plays, less than a month later? Like, pretty remarkable stuff from him. You mentioned the Taylor Heinicke part of this. I know a lot of Packer fans. I mean, I was doing the show when that game happened, and a lot of Packer fans, like, the Packers won that game technically, convincingly, but I don't think any Packer fan left that game going, yeah, the Packers kicked that team's ass. Like, that's not what happened. As you mentioned, the points left on the board, and ultimately was turnovers. Taylor Heinicke threw the pick. He fumbled twice. They were lucky to only lose one of those fumbles. And that's going to be, we'll get to the matchups in a little bit, but that's going to be a matchup that I have my eye on, because Rashawn Gary absolutely wrecked this game a year ago. 2 sacks, 4 tackles. He was a monster. Kingsley Enagbare, who's a rookie for the Packers, got his first career sack on Zach Wilson this last week on a really nice pass rush move. He's starting to come on. And Preston Smith needs to step up a little bit. Kenny Clark has been outstanding as an interior pass rusher. I mean, look, for again, we're going to get to the matchups, but for all of the modern NFL-ness that we have going on in the league, the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allens, the let's spread it out and chuck it around the yard, this is a game that, to me, comes down to which team can block the other's front better. And both of these teams are going to feel like they have the advantage in the trenches, and whatever team is able to block up on offense, I think they're gonna feel like they should win this game. And to me, that because of the questions that the Packers have, who's going to start at right guard, where is Elton Jenkins going to play? That is as much about storylines as it is about actual matchups as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Hard to be good or hard to be bad when you're good in the trenches, right? But also hard to be good when you're bad in the trenches.
Matt LaFleur said that almost verbatim. He said, if we can't block, we can't do anything. this week. And so you're absolutely right.
Absolutely. And those key matchups are coming up. Peter, I found a key matchup for myself. Hopefully we're going to find some key matchups for the teams that we cover, but mine is going 20 years strong this next spring. And of course, I'm talking about my 20-year wedding anniversary, which is coming up. And for me, Blue Nile is going to help me make it extra special because the look on my wife's face, thank you very much, but the look on my wife's face when she sees the rock I'm planning on getting her should be amazing. Whether you're looking to pop the question or you have a milestone to celebrate or want to let your love sparkle a little bit, Blue Nile can help you make your celebrations just as memorable as I know mine will be again coming next spring. As the original online jeweler, Blue Nile offers the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers. Blue Nile has helped millions of couples create their perfect engagement ring with their easy online tools, letting you choose diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. Looking for a piece of fine jewelry to commemorate a special milestone, but still having trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. So shop stress-free with Blue Nile's 100% satisfaction guarantee. All Blue Nile orders are insured and shipped for free in discreet packaging. They also offer overnight shipping if you're in a rush. Make your moment sparkle with Blue Nile. Go to BlueNile.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. Again, that's BLUENILE.com. Locked On is the code to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. Once again, that's BlueNile.com. Use the promo code Locked On. All right, guys, continuing on with this crossover Thursday episode here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Commanders hosting the Green Bay Packers. The Packers get to come visit historic FedEx Field, Peter. It's going to be an amazing moment for all of them, I'm sure, having, travel from their home to, Anyway.
Historic FedEx Field, yeah.
We're going to get to historic for a lot of the wrong reasons. We're going to get to who's going to win this game here in a little bit. But first, the way they're going to going to win this game is through these key matchups. Peter, since I can't talk right now, why don't you kick it off and let us know what the key matchup is for the Packers?
So I telegraphed this a little bit in terms of the trenches, but it's even more important because this Washington run defense has been really good this season. They're the 5th best defense against the run by DVOA, and Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, those big boys up front can really cause problems. And this is a Packers offensive line that had their lunch taken by the New York Jets, by Quinnen Williams, and then also by like Sheldon Rankins, and who's a good player, but then like also guys that like you or I couldn't name if we were given 5 or 6 minutes looking at the depth chart. And so that's a problem for the Packers. Now, Josh Myers, the center, has been very good this season. John Runyon Jr., outside of the Jets game, has been very good this season. And David Bakhtiari, I believe, was the highest graded offensive tackle and pass protection of the week last week, according to Pro Football Focus. Mm-hmm. It's that right side. So how do you block up this front on that right side? Well, I think what they're going to do, at the very least, you'll get a new right guard. Royce Newman got benched last week, the right guard. He has been easily the biggest problem with this offensive line. He's giving up like 4 or 5 pressures a game. He's been a little bit of he's better in the run game than the pass game, but that's not saying much because he's terrible as a pass protector right now. And so I think you'll either see Elton Jenkins slide back to guard and then Yosh Nijman flip tackle sides. I think that's the most likely scenario. Yosh was a right tackle at Virginia Tech and has been a quality, like he's looked like an NFL starter at left tackle, filling in for David Bakhtiari and then for Elton Jenkins. And Jenkins has looked more natural at guard than tackle. All pro caliber guard, at least as of this season, like sub-level starter at right tackle. So maybe he's just a guard. That's fine. If Elton Jenkins is your right guard, if you're the Packers, you probably feel really good about this matchup because then it's just, okay, send help to Montez Sweat and figure the rest out because I don't think their secondary edge pass rushers are going to cause the Packers to lose sleep, but Montez Sweat is a really good football player. Okay. And the interior guys I mentioned, really good football players. They lost some of the really good depth that they've had over the last couple of years. Like it felt like they used a number 1 pick on a defensive tackle like every year for 6 straight seasons. But they don't have that anymore. But this team, Jamin Davis, flying around. He's a really athletic guy who, is he the most intuitive player? Not always. He's still sort of figuring this all out, right? But I think that this is a defense, at least in the front, that can give Packers problems. And if they can't run the ball, that's where I worry about this offense. And so to me, that's the biggest matchup. I kind of have a feeling that you're going to say the same thing, but on the other side of the ball. But go ahead and don't let me answer for you.
No, it's absolutely huge, and you're right. This is going to be big for both sides of the ball because when you look at the Washington Commanders' offensive line, Sam Cosmi, he's got that injured finger, and he's practicing with this like really big. It's not like a club. That's actually kind of what I expected it to be, but it's like this weird, like Darth Vader-ish, like shell type of deal, and basically they're just trying to see if he can really work with it and play with it. And
Matt,
yeah, I mean it's kind of crazy. But the question was brought up today to Ron Rivera that, why not move Sam Cosmi inside to right guard, where he's played before and he's proven that he can do pretty well, and let Cornelius Lucas, who filled in at right tackle and did fairly well, play that position, and then kind of put your best five right on the offensive line instead of sticking to maybe depth chart order. And then Tyler Larson got his first action of the season against Chicago Bears. Looked okay, but he also looked like a center who was getting his first action of the season. And what moving Sam Cosmi inside and moving Cornelius Lucas to right tackle does for the Commanders is if Andrew Norwell, who has had some good moments, but had a couple of really drive killing moments as well, if he kind of starts to get loose a little bit, Sadiq Charles, who has been solid as a right guard, is there, and potentially you plug him in at left guard. So yeah, some shifting going on. I mean, typically by week 6, week 7, outside of injuries, you kind of want to know who your guys are, but it looks like both sides kind of still looking for the right chemistry there up front. So that's definitely a key matchup for this game, Peter. I think you hit that right on the head. But for me, again, we're kind of looking at a matchup, and Ron Rivera talked about this too. Like the Packers, he says, watching them on film, there's not a lot different they do this year than they did last year, except now they don't have Devontae Adams. And in Commanders country, that's being viewed as like, this is how this team gets this win, is the loss of Devontae Adams and the comparison between the two rosters. Last year, the Commanders' top 4 wide receivers, Terry McLaurin, Adam Humphries, DeAndre Carter, and Dax Milne. This year, those top 4 receivers, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, who looks like he's trending in the right direction to play this week, and I guess Cam Sims I would put with De'Ami Brown potentially not playing. You look at that, last year's second receiver, Adam Humphries, wouldn't even crack the top 4 on this roster. Meanwhile, the Packers, their top 4 DBs, Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage, Eric Stokes, and Shannon Sullivan last year. You take Sullivan out, you put Jair Alexander, which is a huge upgrade. Don't let me undersell Jair Alexander by any means, but I think the upgrade you get at Commanders receivers versus the upgrade you get in the Packers secondary, the fact that, again, according to what Ron Rivera and his staff are seeing, it looks to be similar type tendencies, and this really close couple of mistakes here and there, the Commanders cost them this win last year on the road, could spell a win in FedEx.
If I'm the Commanders, that is absolutely the case that I'm making, and that is that like these two teams were pretty close last year. You take Devontae Adams out, you sort of rebalance the scales in favor of the Commanders' skill players. I think the difference is Taylor Heinicke was your every week starter at the time, right? Yep. Like that, he's getting every rep every week versus coming in this week. And then I also think it's worth pointing out, if you go back to that 2021 game, and this is not everything, but Robert Tonyan had a nice game in that one, 4 catches for 63 and a score, and Allen Lazard, 5 catches for 60 and a score. He was a big factor, Allen Lazard was, in this game. And so he's going to get even more opportunities. And now the Commanders, William Jackson he's got the old I don't want to be here hamstring pull. Like that's the, not really, but like that's the injury. And so, okay, now what are you going to get from, Benjamin St-Juste and Kendall Fuller and Rashad Wildgoose, who a lot of Wisconsin fans are going to know from his college days.
I love it.
And one of my favorite tweets of all time had a picture of him chasing someone. So it's a wild goose chase. So if you haven't memed that already in Washington, Commanders fans, please feel free, take that, go do that. But this skill group, it's not the same. Yeah. And I think that's a big difference for sure. But Tonyan is going to have a bigger role. He ate last year. Lazard's going to have a bigger role. He ate last year. What I think is interesting too is if you go back 3 or 4 seasons, I think it was maybe even 2018 or 2019, in a game between these two teams, Jair Alexander shadowed Scary Terry.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the end of that game when the Packers were up, I think 3 scores or something, that they were able to finally get a chunk play on Jair, and I think McLaurin scored. But I think that like it's hard to overstate that difference of having someone like Jair Alexander. I mean, he put Garrett Wilson in a torture chamber last week, and the Jets tried to move him around, and Joe Barry said, "Cool, you want to put him in the slot? Here's 23 lined up across him, and he's going to do the thing that is really tough for a lot of corners to do, and press you with a two-way go. It is you have to be such a crazy athlete to press from the slot because if you throw that hand and you're wrong."
Oh, buddy,
you're out the door. And so you have to be so gifted, and Jair can do that. And so I'm really interested to see. It was the same thing last year. Eric Stokes got a lot of run against Terry McLaurin, and I thought held up pretty well, gave up one big play really, and it was the touchdown. And so like Eric Stokes has not played great this season. How do the Packers want to match up? Are they going to play a bunch of man coverage? That's the other big matchup that I'm interested here, because if I'm the Commanders, I'm trying to create plays down the field. Okay, Packers, you want to not play your quarter shell? You want to sit in that single high look? You want to try and rob the middle of the field? All right, Jahan Dotson, 9 route, go long. Terry McLaurin, go like it's gonna kind of be, I think, that kind of set of opportunities for them, and then how well they can hit on some of those opportunities is going to dictate how well that offense can move the ball. But this Packers passing defense has been really good this season. Lead the league in yards per game allowed, under 200 yards per game allowed through the air. But it's been a run force run on the Packers defense. And so I think it's going to be incumbent on Washington to stay patient. Scott Turner, I don't think you have to threaten Scott Turner with a good time running the ball. Like I think he will do it, especially with Taylor Heinicke. So
typically.
I think like you could make the case, okay, they'll press and they'll try and, get aggressive over the top. And I don't think they will. So I think this is going to be a close game. I think this is going to be a really fun game. And that's a weird thing to say. I don't know if you saw this, David. Matt LaFleur was asked, would you rather see Taylor Heinicke or Carson Wentz? Like, or basically what he said was, like, given the limitations with Carson's injury, like, would you rather, what he was trying to say was, would you rather see Carson at less than 100% than Taylor Heinicke? And Matt LaFleur was like, there is 0% chance I'm answering this question. Which to me meant, we're kind of bummed that we're not seeing Carson Wentz.
Right. Yeah.
And it's interesting because Taylor Heinicke got after them a little bit last year. So this is going to be fun. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, absolutely. No. And that's going to be huge. And on the other side of that matchup real quick, I'm looking forward to seeing who the Packers use or try to use to attack Kendall Fuller, because he's gotten exposed a little bit this season. And not only who, but how. Like, are they going to use, which combinations are going to use? Maybe try to spin him up as a veteran. He has looked lesser than a veteran at times. So it's gonna be very interesting to see if that trend kind of continues here with Aaron Rodgers targeting him instead of the younger guy Benjamin St-Juste, who's actually been winning more of his matchups. But we're gonna tell you who's gonna win this game. Is it gonna be the Packers? Is it going to be the Commanders? Predictions are coming up. I'm going to tell you first who's not going to win, and that's anyone trying to get into my house, thanks in part to the people at Simply Safe. When it comes to burglars, your home is like the end zone. Your possessions are the points that they're after, and you need the absolute strongest defense you can muster. This is why I use and trust Simply Safe Home Security. At Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. Their cutting-edge technology is powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back, so you always know your home is safe. I travel a lot covering the Commanders, and you got the Senior Bowl, the Scouting Combine, and while it's all great and fun, I love the fact that I can reach back and check on things back home just using my phone. I can do it in the hotel. I can do it in the stadium. I can do it wherever I am. Plus, if I have a package delivery, it might come in handy in case someone decides my mail is going to be their outlet to vent any lack of employment satisfaction they may have. With 24/7 professional monitoring, Simply Safe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home or you can't be reached. And their equipment options are fully customizable, so you can have as many indoor or outdoor cameras, sensors, and detectors as you want. So customize a perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl. Save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl to learn more. There's no safe like Simply Safe. All right, moment of truth here on this crossover Thursday edition. Locked On Commanders, Locked On Packers. Peter Bukowski, David Harrison. Packers are favored by 5 on the road, right? Typically, I don't even know if this is really a tradition anymore, but they say traditionally the home team gets a field goal. So really, it's kind of like an 8-point swing towards the Green Bay Packers.
2.5 now, yeah.
Yeah, the Packers have only scored more than 24 twice this year, Peter. The Commanders have only allowed more than 24 twice this year. Are either of those things going to become a third, and which one is it going to be? Who do you got winning this game?
I mean, our friends at BetOnline have the over-under here at 41.5. It's one of the lowest totals of the week. Jets Broncos is lower for reasons that I think are obvious.
That is gross.
That over-under is 38.
I'm not a Packers fan. I don't cover the Packers, but that is gross. That is disrespectful.
A 38 total. But yeah, the problem is, how am I supposed to have faith in this offense right now? Yeah. Like, I think the potential is there, but until I see it, it's really hard for me to have faith in this offense scoring. Score 21, challenge Packers. Like that's what the deal is right now. So I think they can get there. I think they're gonna make this offensive line change. I think that creates so many more opportunities for them in the run and pass game. I think the pass protection will be significantly better as a result. And although I think that the run defense is going to be a storyline here, this Washington passing defense has been sort of surprisingly bad for the last couple seasons now. Yeah. And like, they're not terrible. They're not like awful in the way that the Packers are against the run, for example. But this is, I think, a below average passing defense overall. And so I think the Packers win, but I would not lay the 5. Like, I think something like 23-20, 21-17, something like that. Like, I think this is going to be a close game because that Washington front is just going to make life miserable for Aaron Rodgers. I think the Packers can do the same thing. Kenny Clark against a center who, as you mentioned, is just getting his legs under him, and Tyler Larson. Questions about what's going on the right side of that offensive line. I think that's going to be where you see Rashawn Gary lined up a bunch, and that is going to create some issues, I think, for Washington. So I continue to try and stop from saying their name, even though like my brain is just preconditioned to not say the mascot. Commanders. Yeah. I'm gonna learn to say Commanders and Guardians. This is like a sticking point for me. And so, yeah, I think 21-17 is where I'm going to go, which, by the way, would be the under on this one. So I think I would take both of those. I think I would take Washington to cover and the under, which I'm probably getting I haven't looked at it on BetOnline, but I'm probably getting pretty good juicy plus odds if that's what I take.
Definitely going to be some good odds on that one. I'm actually going over on this matchup. I like what you said. The Commanders pass defense, it's kind of funny because they've been kind of feast or famine. In a couple games, they only gave up 3 explosive pass plays, and there was one game where 2 of those 3 were like 21 yards. So they're just in the explosive category. But then there's some other games where they gave up like 5 or 6, and you're talking 40, 50-yard hits on the opposing offense. But then you have other drives where they just don't even allow completion, or it's like 4 yards and you punt. It's kind of a very interesting dynamic, which is why I'm really interested to see how they attack Kendall Fuller, because especially against Philadelphia Eagles, a lot of those came on Kendall Fuller, unfortunately. I've kind of had this rule all season, Peter, that if I think a game is going to be close, I go Commanders. I lean Commanders just because I see them on a daily basis. I see what they're doing. I see the potential, kind of like what you're talking about the Packers. Like, we've yet to see them really put it together, even against Jacksonville Jaguars, Chicago Bears. Like, neither of those wins, you're not going to put either of those reels in your team Hall of Fame anytime soon. I'm going Commanders 24-21. Like I said, that number 24 kind of stuck out to me. So I think it's a race to 21, which that was interesting because you kind of mentioned that too. A race to 21 and then see who gets the game-winning field goal. I feel like this is 24-21. Either way, it shakes out. But because it's close, I am going to lean Commanders. And if you're a points better, if you like to bet against the line, I've got the Commanders coming in under that 5. So I mean, take that for what it's worth.
We agree on the number. I think that like the 5 is on the road for the Packers. What have we seen from Green Bay that says they should be favored by 5 points against almost anybody? I get that it's a backup quarterback. I get that this is a team sitting at the bottom of the standings, but like, why are the Packers good right now? What do they do well right now? Like, this is a good question. Now, I think the answer is they stop the pass. And that's a really important trait to have in the modern NFL. But in a game where you already have a backup quarterback, and a game where last year that quarterback ran all over you, in a game you're probably going to play a lot of man coverage again, it's going to be a close game. And I won't be surprised. I was surprised when the Jets beat the Packers last week. And by the way, John Butchko came on my show from Locked On Jets and picked the Jets. Good for him. He picked the Jets. and they won. I will not be surprised this week if the Commanders win. But I will say loud things into a microphone on Sunday if that happens.
Listen, I win either way because my listeners know I'm a football purist at heart. I'm a football fan before I'm an anything else fan. And Romeo Doubs was one of my favorite guys in the Senior Bowl. So
amazing.
If the Packers win, I can pretty much guarantee Romeo's gonna have some sort of role in it.
You wondered who the Kendall Fuller guy is going to be. The Packers have not been shy about lining him up against opposing teams' cornerback ones. They line him up against Sauce. They line him up against Jack Jones. Against they are not afraid to just say, okay, you want to take this guy? He can get open, and he was open a ton last week and didn't get the ball on some of those. I think vertically, especially against someone like Kendall Fuller, who you mentioned, looks like maybe a half step to a step slower this year. That might be a place where the Packers attack, and I think I'm gonna go out on a limb and make a prediction here that I think that ends up being the difference. Romeo Doubs makes a big play vertically on Kendall Fuller. And is the difference, and that's how the Packers get a much needed win. David Harrison.
Yeah. So listen, I literally had an off the record conversation with someone inside the organization about that exact matchup, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Thank all of you for making the Locked On Commanders and Locked On Packers podcast first listen or your first view of the day. Now make your second listen or view the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts, just like the one you're listening to or watching right now. For Peter Bukowski, co-founder of The Leap, on Twitter at Peter_Bukowski, not like you're not already following him, and host of the Locked On Packers podcast. I'm David Harrison, writer for Sports Illustrated's Commander Country, one of the hosts of the Locked On Commanders podcast. If you're out and about, please be safe, be kind to one another, enjoy the game, and thank you for joining us on this crossover Thursday episode on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out Chris Russell.